I may be leaving today, but my heart will always stay with you. I promise I will come back for you.
And I promise I will wait for you, no matter how long it takes.
I am going to work hard so we can have a better future together. One day, I will return and make you proud.
I don't need riches, I only need you. Just come back safely, and I will be here.
No distance can change how much I love you. You are the reason I am going.
No matter what people say, I will remain faithful to you. My heart belongs to you.
When I return, we will build our home, start our family, and never be apart again.
I will count the days until that moment. I promise to wait for you.
I love you.
I love you too.
Then keep me in your prayers, and I will keep you in my dreams.
Go and succeed, my love. I will be waiting for your return.
Richard left Nigeria with a heart full of dreams and pain. The day he was leaving, the morning sky was still pale and the streets were quiet except for the sound of early buses and distant horns. His mother stood beside him with tears in her eyes, trying to smile even though her chest was heavy. She held his hands tightly as if she could keep him from going if she held long enough. Richard was a young man with strong shoulders and gentle eyes. He had always wanted more for life, not only for himself, but for the people he loved. He did not want to remain in struggle forever. He wanted to build a better future. Above all, he wanted to build that future with Gloria, the woman he loved with all his heart. Gloria stood a few steps away, dressed neatly, trying to be brave. Her eyes were wet, but she kept wiping them quickly. Richard walked to her and touched her cheek softly. "I will come back for you," he said in a low voice. "I am going to suffer now so we can smile later." Gloria nodded and forced a smile. "I will wait for you. I believe in you." Those words entered his heart like warm fire. He carried them with him when he climbed into the bus that would take him to the airport. As the bus moved, he looked back through the dusty window and saw his mother waving slowly and Gloria standing still with both hands on her chest. He believed love was waiting for him at home, and that belief gave him courage. The journey abroad was long and tiring. Richard had never traveled so far before. Everything felt new, large, and cold. When he arrived in the foreign country, the wind alone shocked him. It cut through his clothes and touched his bones. The buildings were tall, the roads were wide, and people moved quickly without looking at each other. Nobody knew him there. Nobody cared where he came from. He was just another worker trying to survive. The first room he rented was very small. It had one narrow bed, one weak heater, one tiny table, and a window that showed the back wall of another building. At night, the room felt silent in a painful way. Richard would lie down and hear pipes knocking in the walls, footsteps above him, and sometimes the sound of his own breathing. He missed home deeply. He missed the warm weather, his mother's voice, the smell of food cooking outside, and Gloria's laughter. But he reminded himself why he had come. He had not traveled for enjoyment, he had traveled for purpose. He found work in a factory where the machines never seemed to rest. The place was loud all day. Metal clanged, belts moved, boxes slammed, and supervisors shouted instructions. Richard stood for many hours lifting heavy items, arranging goods, cleaning stations, and rushing to meet targets. His hands became rough. His back ached. Some days, his feet hurt so much that removing his shoes at night felt like freedom. But he never complained for long. Whenever tiredness tried to break him, he remembered Gloria. He would imagine her smiling in the house they would one day own. He would imagine children running in a clean compound while she stood at the door calling them inside. Those pictures in his mind became stronger than pain. After factory shifts, Richard sometimes changed clothes quickly and went to another job washing dishes in a restaurant. The kitchen there was always hot and busy. Plates piled high, pots came black with grease, water splashed over his sleeves, steam filled the air. Other workers joked, cursed, rushed and argued, but Richard mostly stayed quiet. He washed, stacked, scrubbed and dried until late at night. Then he returned to his room exhausted. Sometimes he slept only 3 or 4 hours before waking again for the factory. His body begged for rest, but his dreams pushed him forward. Winter became one of his hardest enemies. Richard had never known such cold. He learned how painful air could be when it froze his ears and fingers. He woke before sunrise and walked to bus stops while snow lay on the ground like white dust. His breath came out like smoke. His hands shook inside gloves that were already old when he bought them. He often thought of the hot sun back home and smiled sadly. Yet, even in winter, he kept moving. He told himself every cold morning was a brick in the house he was building from far away. Every month, once his pay entered his account, Richard became careful and serious. He would sit at the small table in his room with a notebook, calculate his rent, transport, food, and the smallest amount needed to survive. Then he sent most of the money to Gloria in Nigeria. He never delayed it. He never played with it. When the transfer was done, he felt peace. He would call Gloria with excitement. "Did you receive it?" he would ask. "Yes," she would answer. "I got it." Then he would ask many questions. "How is the land matter going? Did the brick seller come? Have you checked the roof materials? Are prices rising?" Gloria always sounded calm. She told him not to worry. She said she was handling things well. She said progress was moving. Richard would smile proudly in his lonely room. "I trust you," he would say. "You are my partner." Gloria would laugh softly and tell him to take care of himself. Those calls became light in his difficult life. Richard denied himself many things so he could send more money home. While other workers bought new phones, he kept using an old one with a cracked edge. While others went out on weekends, he stayed inside or took extra shifts. While others bought expensive coats, he searched second-hand stores for cheaper ones. He wore old clothes until they faded. He repaired shoes instead of replacing them. He ate simple meals, rice, bread, eggs, cheap soup, noodles, anything that would fill his stomach without draining his wallet. Sometimes, he passed restaurant windows and looked at hot meals he could not justify buying. He would smile and keep walking. Later, he would tell himself, enjoyment later. In the factory, some men laughed at him kindly. "Richard, you walk too much," one said. "You need to leave." Richard answered with a tired smile. "I am living, I am building." Another man asked him once, "Who are you suffering for?" Richard's eyes softened. "For the woman I love," he said, "for my future family." The man shook his head and laughed, but Richard did not mind. He knew what loyalty meant. On Sundays, if he was free, Richard cleaned his room carefully, washed clothes by hand sometimes to save coins, and called home longer than usual. He spoke to his mother first. She always asked if he was eating enough. She asked if the cold was too much. She prayed for him over the phone in a trembling voice. Then he called Gloria. He loved hearing her voice after long weeks. She told him about neighborhood events, power cuts, market prices, and little stories from home. Sometimes she said builders had come to inspect materials. Sometimes she said she had visited the site. Richard listened with joy. He would close his eyes and imagine walls rising slowly because of his labor. He often asked her to send pictures whenever possible. When she sent photos of blocks, sand, or marked land, he felt proud beyond words. He showed co-workers sometimes. "This is my project back home," he said. "I am doing something real." They congratulated him and he stood taller. Loneliness still visited him often. There were nights when the room felt too empty, nights when rain tapped the window and made him miss home so badly that tears gathered without warning. He would hold his phone and look at Gloria's picture for comfort. In the photo, she was smiling brightly, wearing simple earrings, head slightly tilted. He would whisper, "Wait for me." Then he would sleep. There were times temptation came. Some women noticed he was hardworking and respectful. A co-worker once invited him out repeatedly. Another neighbor smiled warmly and offered friendship. Richard remained distant. "My heart is already with someone," he said. He did not want to betray the woman he expected to be faithful to him. To him, love meant discipline when nobody was watching. One evening, after an especially hard shift, Richard returned with bleeding fingers from torn gloves. He sat on the bed and stared at his hands. He was tired in body and spirit. For the first time, he wondered if the struggle was too much. Then his phone rang. It was Gloria. Her voice sounded sweet and full of concern. She asked how his day went. He told her it was hard. She encouraged him gently. "You are a strong man," she said. "What you are doing will bless us. Do not give up." Richard's eyes filled with tears. He looked at the walls of his tiny room and suddenly they did not feel so tight anymore. "I won't give up," he replied. "Not when you believe in me." After the call, he cleaned his wounds, ate bread and slept peacefully. Time moved on. Months became years of steady sacrifice, but in this first stage of the journey, Richard still carried bright hope. Every challenge became smaller when measured against the future he imagined. He saw himself returning home one day with savings, wisdom, and honor. He saw Gloria standing beside the finished house. He saw his mother smiling proudly in a clean sitting room. He saw children playing in the yard. These dreams were not small dreams to him. They were fuel. They gave meaning to every cold morning, every sore muscle, every missed celebration, every lonely night. One late evening, after sending another month's money, Richard stood by his little window. Outside, snow was falling slowly under streetlights, making the world look quiet and clean. He pressed his forehead lightly against the glass and smiled to himself. "One day," he whispered, "all this pain will become joy." In his heart, he truly believed it, and that belief helped him sleep with peace. While Richard suffered abroad, Gloria remained in Nigeria, living in the warmth of the life he was trying so hard to build for both of them. In the beginning, she truly missed him. The first weeks after he left were heavy for her. She woke each morning and reached for a phone that had no new message yet. She sat outside in the evenings and stared at the road, remembering how he used to walk toward her with a smile after work. She cried some nights when nobody saw her. She missed his steady voice, his gentle care, and the feeling of being loved by a man who put her first. When Richard called from abroad, she listened closely to every word. She asked if he was eating well, if the cold was too much, if he was resting enough. She even prayed for him at times. During those early months, Gloria still felt tied to him by love. But time can test hearts in ways people do not expect. As months turned into years, the distance became a quiet wall between them. Richard was far away in another world of snow, work, and sacrifice. Gloria remained in a place full of movement, people, noise, and daily temptations. She began to feel alone in a different way. It was no longer the sharp pain of missing him. It became a dull emptiness mixed with impatience. She wanted company. She wanted attention she could touch. She wanted enjoyment she could see immediately. Richard's calls became routine. His promises sounded far away. His dreams required waiting, and waiting started to feel like punishment to her restless heart. At first, she fought these feelings. She told herself to be strong. She reminded herself that Richard was suffering for her. But slowly, another voice inside her began to speak louder. It told her she deserved softness now, pleasure now, excitement now. It told her she was still young and should not waste her best years waiting for a man she could only hear through a phone. One afternoon, Gloria went to a friend's birthday gathering. Music played loudly in the compound. Plastic chairs were arranged in rows. People laughed and ate and moved in groups. Gloria dressed well that day, wearing bright clothes and perfume. She wanted to feel alive again. It was there she first noticed Colin. He was handsome in an easy way, always smiling with smooth words and careless confidence. He wore neat clothes, though nobody knew what work he truly did. He moved from group to group like a man with no burdens. When he saw Gloria sitting alone for a moment, he approached with a tray of drinks and a grin. "A beautiful woman should not look this serious at a celebration," he said. Gloria tried not to smile but failed. "And a stranger should not speak as if he knows me," replied. Colin laughed softly. "Then let me stop being a stranger." He sat near her, not too close, and spoke with the kind of charm that made ordinary words sound special. He asked questions. He listened carefully. He praised her smile, her calm manner, the way she carried herself. Gloria had not felt seen like that in a long time. Richard loved her deeply, But he was far away. Colin was here, warm, present, and full of attention. That evening, Gloria returned home with his number in her phone and confusion in her heart. At first, she told herself it meant nothing. They only talked. Colin began calling often. He asked if she had eaten. He invited her out for short walks, small meals, and drives through town. He spoke sweetly and laughed easily. He complained about how lonely she must be. He said any woman in her position deserved better treatment than being left alone for years. Gloria defended Richard in the beginning. He did not abandon me, she said one day. He went to work for our future. Colin nodded slowly, then sighed. Future, future, future. Some men always promise tomorrow while women cry today. Those words entered her mind like seeds. Richard continued sending money faithfully every month. He called with tired joy. He asked about land, building plans, and progress. Gloria answered smoothly. She had become skilled at sounding sincere. Everything is moving, she told him. Prices have risen, but I am handling it. Richard thanked her for being patient and responsible. After the calls, Gloria sometimes felt guilty. She would sit quietly and stare at the wall. But guilt fades quickly when fed by comfort. Soon, she started using part of the money Richard sent for herself. First, it was small things, new sandals, hair appointments, better clothes. Then, Colin began enjoying the benefits too. She paid for outings, drinks, fuel, and gifts. Colin praised her generosity and made her feel admired. You are not like other women, he said. You know how to enjoy life. Gloria glowed under such words. The money that had been earned through Richard's aching hands abroad now disappeared in restaurants, parties, shopping bags, and careless pleasures. When Richard called, she still spoke of cement, blocks, laborers, and plants. To make the life stronger, she visited a half-built house in another area one day with a friend. They took pictures near piles of sand and unfinished walls. Later, she sent them to Richard. This is the current stage, she wrote proudly. Richard stared at the pictures overseas with tears in his eyes. He showed co-workers and smiled. My woman is doing well. We are almost there. Gloria received his praise and sent a heart emoji back, then went out that evening with Colin wearing a new dress bought from Richard's sacrifice. As time passed, Colin's influence grew. He was charming, but he hated responsibility. He had no steady ambition. He liked comfort without labor. He slept late, moved around with friends, and always looked for easy money. Gloria saw these signs, but by then she was already attached to the feeling he gave her. He was present. He held her hand in public. He took photos with her. He whispered sweet things in her ear. He made her feel chosen in the moment. That was enough for her weakened judgment. One rainy evening, after another outing, Colin looked around Gloria's rented place and said casually, "Why are you staying here alone like this? Come and stay with me. We can build something together." The words sounded serious, though they were light in his mouth. Gloria hesitated. She thought of Richard. She thought of the years of waiting. She thought of the money still entering her account each month. Then she thought of waking up alone again. Within weeks, she packed her things quietly and moved into Colin's house. She did not tell Richard. She told neighbors she was relocating for convenience. She told herself she still had control of everything. But in truth, she had crossed a line she once believed she never would. Life with Colin was exciting at first. There was music, laughter, late mornings, outings, and constant company. Gloria cooked for him, dressed well, and enjoyed acting like a settled woman. Richard money continued to arrive, and it supported the new household. Rent was paid, groceries were bought. Colin wore better clothes. Small electronics appeared in the house. Friends visited and admired them. Nobody asked where the money came from directly, but some guessed. Gloria ignored whispers. She had become comfortable living two lives. Faithful fiancé on the phone, hidden partner at home. Richard kept asking about building progress. To satisfy him, she created more lies. She paid a young man with editing skills to combine pictures into short videos that looked like construction updates. In one video, bricks were stacked while workers moved in the background. In another, a roof frame could be seen from a distance. She sent them proudly. Richard watched them again and again abroad. He was so happy that he called his mother to say progress was real. His mother thanked God and praised Gloria for standing by her son. Gloria heard these blessings through phone calls and said thank you with a straight face. Yet sometimes, late at night when Colin slept beside her, she felt an emptiness deeper than before. She knew she was living on lies, but instead of changing, she buried the feeling under more enjoyment. Months later, Gloria discovered she was pregnant. The news shook her. She sat in silence after the clinic visit, holding the paper in trembling hands. A child changes lies into realities. She could no longer pretend life was simple. When she told Colin, he first looked surprised, then pleased, then practical. "We will manage. Children bring blessings." Gloria searched his face for deeper commitment, but found only passing excitement. Still, she chose to continue. She told nobody connected to Richard. When Richard called that week asking about the next stage of roofing, she answered normally while touching her stomach. The double life had now become heavy, but she carried it anyway. Pregnancy changed her daily routine. She rested more. She reduced outings. Colin became less attentive than before. The sweetness that attracted her began to thin. He still enjoyed being supported, but he no longer praised her constantly. Sometimes he disappeared for hours with friends. Sometimes he returned irritated and demanding food. Gloria noticed the change, but felt trapped by her own choices. She could not confess to Richard. She could not easily leave Colin. She had built a prison with comfort as the gate. Richard, unaware of everything, became even more determined abroad. He sent extra money during that period, saying he wanted faster progress on the house. Gloria used it for hospital bills, baby items, and household needs. Richard felt proud that he was building faster. Gloria cried after one such call, but even then she did not tell the truth. When labor pains came, it was during a humid night. She was taken to a hospital where she cried, sweated, and gripped the sheets through waves of pain. After hours of struggle, a baby boy was born. His cry filled the room with life. Gloria held him against her chest and wept deeply. For a moment, every lie, every fear, every greed disappeared before the simple power of motherhood. The child was innocent. He had asked for nothing. He only needed love. Colin visited later, smiling proudly, carrying cheap gifts and taking pictures. He named himself father loudly. Gloria watched him and wondered what future awaited them all. Back home, the baby became the center of the house. His tiny hands, soft cheeks, and sleepy sounds filled the rooms with tenderness. Gloria loved him fiercely. She woke at night to feed him, carried him on her back, sang softly, and kissed his forehead when he slept. Even broken lives can contain real love, and her love for the child was true. Yet the foundation beneath that love remained false. Richard still called from abroad, still asked about builders, still thanked her for patience, still sent money. Sometimes the baby cried during calls, and Gloria would quickly mute the phone or step outside. She became skilled at hiding reality. Colin, meanwhile, enjoyed the benefits but avoided heavy duties. He played with the child when in a good mood, then disappeared again. Gloria now managed a man, a child, and a web of lies, all at once. She often stood by the window at dusk, holding her son, watching the road in silence. Somewhere far away, Richard smiled proudly, unaware that the money leaving his tired hands was feeding another man's household and raising a child that was not his. And in that hidden house, Gloria's little boy became the center of her new secret life. 5 full years passed since Richard left Nigeria, with hope in his chest and promises in his mouth. Time moved slowly for him because each day was built from labor, waiting, and discipline. Seasons changed again and again in the foreign country where he lived. Snow came and melted, rain fell and stopped, trees lost leaves and grew them back. But Richard's routine hardly changed. He still woke before sunrise many mornings. He still hurried through cold streets to factories and job sites. He still stood for long hours while machines roared around him. He still took extra shifts whenever possible. His body no longer belonged fully to youth. His shoulders were heavier now. His knees sometimes ached when he climbed stairs. His back often complained after lifting loads all day. Fine lines had formed around his eyes from stress and tiredness. Yet inside that worn body, his heart remained faithful. He still believed he was building something beautiful. He still believed love was waiting for him at home. He still believed every painful day had purpose. In the room he rented, Richard had changed homes twice over the years, each one small and simple. He never chased comfort because he always thought comfort was being saved for later. He owned little but kept everything neat. Clothes folded carefully, shoes lined near the wall, receipts and money records arranged in envelopes, photos of his mother and Gloria placed where he could see them. He often looked at Gloria's picture before sleeping. Though the photo had become old, he treated it like something sacred. He spoke to it sometimes when loneliness grew too loud. "Just wait small," he would whisper. "We are almost there." At work, many people respected him because they had watched him endure year after year without wasting himself. Some men drank heavily after shifts, some chased women, some gambled away pay. Richard did none of those things. He worked, saved, sent money home, and rested. He was known as serious but kind. If someone needed help lifting something, Richard helped. If a new worker looked lost, Richard guided him. If somebody mocked his simple lifestyle, he only smiled. He knew where he believed he was going. One afternoon, during lunch break, a co-worker named Daniel sat beside him with a sandwich and asked, "Richard, you have been here long now. Why not bring your woman over?" Richard smiled proudly. "Soon," he answered. "Very soon. House is almost done back home. I want to return first, settle everything, marry properly, then we travel together." Daniel laughed and shook his head. "You trust from far distance like that?" Richard did not take offense. "Trust is what makes love stand," he said. "If there is no trust, there is nothing." Daniel looked at him for a moment and said quietly, "I hope your trust is blessed." Richard nodded with confidence. It will be. He truly believed it. Through those 5 years, Richard had sent more money than many people around him could understand. He skipped pleasures, delayed dreams, and carried burdens gladly because he thought he was investing in home, family, and future. Gloria kept sending pictures and short videos of supposed progress. Richard stored them on his phone carefully. Sometimes at night, he watched them again. The walls, the sand piles, the roof frame, the painted gates shone from angles that hid truth. He imagined walking through those rooms one day. He imagined placing his mother in the best bedroom. He imagined Gloria decorating the sitting room. He imagined children playing on clean tiles. Those dreams fed him more than food. As the 5th year neared its end, Richard began to feel a rising excitement that made hard days easier. He counted months, then weeks, then days. He had reached the amount he believed was enough to begin the next chapter. He would return home, surprise Gloria, complete any final arrangements, and then bring her back abroad with him so they could build together side by side. The thought filled him with joy so pure that he sometimes smiled alone while working. One freezing morning, while loading goods at the factory, he paused for a moment and imagined Gloria seeing him suddenly at the door. He pictured her screaming with happiness, dropping whatever she held and running into his arms. He laughed to himself. A supervisor shouted for everyone to move faster, and Richard returned to work with renewed energy. He began buying gifts little by little. He chose carefully because every item carried meaning. For Gloria, he bought perfume from a store window she would never expect him to enter. He bought a beautiful handbag after comparing prices for 2 weeks. He chose jewelry that was simple but elegant. He bought soft winter clothes too, thinking she would need them when she joined him abroad. She would look fine in this, he said quietly while holding a coat against the air as if she stood there. For his mother, he bought warm wrappers, comfortable shoes, medicine supplements, and a new phone so she could hear him clearly. For younger relatives, he bought small things, shirts, watches, chocolates. Richard loved giving. It made him feel like all the years had produced fruit. His room slowly filled with packed bags and boxes. He arranged everything with care, labeling items, folding clothes neatly, protecting gifts with paper. Sometimes he reopened bags just to look again and imagine reactions. "Mama will cry," he said once with a smile. "Gloria will not believe it." He also made plans in notebooks. One page listed things to do immediately on arrival. Another listed legal papers needed for Gloria's travel process. Another had house ideas and budgets. Richard was not just dreaming, he was preparing. He wanted to come home as a man ready for action. On video calls, Gloria still played her part well. She spoke calmly. She asked when he might visit. She mentioned small issues with workers and materials. Richard took these as signs that everything was real. Sometimes she looked distracted, but he blamed network problems or tiredness. He never allowed suspicion to grow because love had trained his mind to defend her. Once, when she missed several calls and later said she was busy, he only apologized for disturbing her. He had become so committed to the picture in his heart that he could not see cracks in it. The closer departure came, the more emotional Richard became. He remembered the young man who first arrived years earlier with one suitcase and fear. He compared that version of himself to the man now standing stronger through suffering. Yes, his body was tired. Yes, he had missed weddings, funerals, birthdays, and ordinary days at home. Yes, he had cried alone many nights. But he believed it had all been worth it. He believed he was about to harvest joy. On his final week before travel, co-workers gathered during break to celebrate him. Someone bought snacks, another brought drinks. Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. "So this is it, going back to your queen." Richard laughed brightly. "Yes, my brother, time don't reach." Another man joked, "When you marry, send us photo of mansion." Richard grinned and pulled out one of the saved videos. "See progress," he said proudly. They watched and congratulated him. "You are lucky. A loyal woman is rare." Richard's chest filled with gratitude. "God has been good to me," he replied. That night, alone in his room, he knelt beside the bed and prayed deeply. He thanked God for keeping him alive through harsh winters, long shifts, sickness scares, and loneliness. He thanked God for his mother's health. He thanked God for Gloria's patience. He asked for safe travel and a joyful reunion. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he prayed because relief was close enough to touch. On the day he left, he cleaned the room one last time, though he was no longer staying there. He folded the blanket, wiped surfaces, and stood silently in the center of the space that had held his pain and hope for 5 years. "You were small," he whispered to the room, "but you helped me dream big." He carried his bags downstairs, each one heavy with gifts and plans. The taxi driver helped load them and asked if he was relocating. Richard smiled. "I am going home." The ride to the airport felt unreal. Streets he had walked in snow and rain passed by the window one last time. Buildings, bus stops, shops and corners tied to years of struggle slipped away behind him. At the airport, lines were long and announcements constant, but Richard did not mind. His spirit was light. He checked in his luggage carefully, making sure the gift bags were handled well. While waiting at the gate, he opened his phone and looked at Gloria's picture again. He touched the screen gently. "I am coming," he whispered. During the flight, sleep came and went. Whenever he closed his eyes, he saw scenes of reunion. He imagined landing, taking a taxi straight to Gloria's place, knocking softly, then hearing footsteps rush to the door. He imagined the door opening slowly, her eyes widening, then tears bursting free. He imagined dropping his bags and pulling her into a long embrace. He imagined her touching his face to make sure he was real. He imagined laughter through tears. He imagined telling her, "Pack your things, we start our life together now." He smiled so much during the flight that a nearby passenger noticed. "You look like a happy man," the passenger said. Richard nodded. "I am going home to love." He watched clouds through the small window and felt every sacrifice shine with meaning. He remembered cold mornings when his fingers were numb. He remembered nights washing dishes until his wrists hurt. He remembered saying no to pleasure so future could say yes. All of it now seemed worth the cost. When the plane landed in Nigeria, Richard's heart beat fast. The air itself felt familiar and warm. The sounds, voices, and movement around him felt like music after years away. He collected his luggage with care and stepped outside into sunlight that touched his face like welcome. He inhaled deeply and smiled. "Home," he said under his breath. In the taxi, he watched roads, people, roadside sellers, buses, and busy streets with emotional eyes. So much had changed, yet so much remained the same. He imagined how close he was now to the life he had protected in his heart for 5 years. He held the bag containing Gloria's gift on his lap like treasure. He pictured her wearing the perfume, carrying the handbag, laughing beside him in the house he believed she had built. He believed the woman waiting in his imagination was still the same woman who waved goodbye years ago. He did not know that time had changed more than streets and seasons. He did not know that the love he guarded faithfully had already been traded for comfort and deceit. Richard arrived in Nigeria with a heart overflowing with joy, expectation, and deep gratitude. For 5 long years, he had carried this moment inside him like a treasure. Through cold winters, aching muscles, lonely nights, and endless shifts abroad, he had imagined this return more times than he could count. Now it was finally real. The warm air touched his face as he stepped out from the airport. The sounds of people talking loudly, taxi drivers calling for passengers, horns in the distance, and the movement of a living city filled him with emotion. He smiled like a man who had crossed a desert and finally seen water. His bags were heavy with gifts, but his heart felt light. He had chosen not to tell Gloria he was coming because he wanted to see her natural joy. He wanted to watch her face change from ordinary calm to shocked happiness. He had replayed that scene in his mind during the flight. In his imagination, she would open the door slowly, freeze in disbelief, then cry and run into his arms. He wanted to give her that beautiful memory. So he kept his arrival secret, even when he had chances to call from the airport. Let it be a surprise, he told himself with a smile. He hired a taxi and carefully placed his luggage in the back. One bag held gifts for Gloria, perfume, clothes, a handbag, jewelry, and documents he planned to use for their future travel together. Another held gifts for his mother and family. As the taxi moved through the busy roads, Richard looked out the window with shining eyes. Street sellers balanced trays on their heads, children ran beside narrow roads, shops opened their doors, buses shouted destinations, the sun sat bright over everything. He loved it all. Home felt alive in a way the foreign land never did. His mind raced ahead of the taxi. He imagined Gloria's laughter, her tears, her hands touching his face to make sure he was truly there. He imagined sitting together that evening, talking until late into the night about all they had endured. He imagined visiting the house she had built with the money he sent. He imagined starting the paperwork to take her abroad so they could begin a better life side by side. Every thought was sweet. At one traffic stop, he even took out the perfume he bought for her and smiled at it. "You will like this," he whispered. After some time, the taxi turned into the area where Gloria used to live. Richard's heartbeat rose. He adjusted his shirt, wiped his face, and sat upright. This is it, he thought. The car stopped in front of the apartment building where she had once rented a room. Richard paid the driver, thanked him, and stood for a moment looking at the building. It was older than he remembered. Paint had faded, a broken bucket sat near the entrance, a woman swept dust nearby. Richard did not mind such details. He was focused only on the joy waiting upstairs. He picked up the bag meant for Gloria and walked quickly inside. The corridor smelled of cooking oil and damp walls. He reached her old door and knocked gently first, then harder with excitement. No answer came. He smiled to himself. Maybe she is bathing, he thought. He knocked again, this time calling softly, "Gloria!" Silence answered him. He waited, then tried the handle. The door was locked. He stepped back, confused but still calm. Perhaps she had gone to the market. Perhaps she was at work. Perhaps she would return any minute. He asked a woman from the next room, "Good afternoon, please. Gloria who stayed here, is she around?" The woman frowned in thought. "Which Gloria?" she asked. Richard laughed lightly. "The lady that used to stay in this room?" The woman shrugged. "Ah, that one left long ago." Richard's smile weakened. "Left? Where did she go?" The woman shook her head. "I don't know. Many people come and go here." Richard thanked her politely, but unease began to creep into his chest. He asked another neighbor downstairs, an older man sitting outside, "Sir, please, the lady who stayed upstairs, Gloria, do you know where she moved to?" The man squinted at him. "I cannot remember well. She left some years back." "Did she say where she was going?" Richard asked. "No," the man replied. "I mind my own matter." Richard forced a small smile and stepped away. His heart was no longer light. He stood outside the building with the gift bag in his hand, staring at nothing. Why would she move and not tell me, he wondered. Then he quickly defended her in his mind. Maybe there had been landlord trouble. Maybe her phone was stolen when it happened. Maybe she planned to explain later. He reached for his phone and called her number, with excitement mixed now with confusion. It rang. His heart jumped with relief. She picked up. "Hello," she said. Richard's face broke into a smile. "Gloria, guess who is in Nigeria right now?" he said happily. There was a pause. "Richard?" she asked, sounding startled. "Yes, I am back. I came to surprise you. I am at your place now, but neighbor said you moved. Where are you? I have gifts. I want to see you now." Another silence followed, longer this time. Richard's smile slowly faded. "Gloria?" he asked. Her voice returned, tight and strange. "I am busy now." Before he could speak again, the call ended. Richard stared at the screen, shocked. "Maybe network," he muttered quickly. He called back at once. It rang, then cut. He called again. No answer. Again, no answer. Again, switched off. A chill moved through him, though the day was hot. He stood still in the dusty road while people passed around him. The same phone call he imagined full of tears and joy had lasted only moments and ended like a closed door. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe she was in a difficult place. Maybe she panicked. Maybe her battery died. But beneath those excuses, fear began to replace joy inside him. He looked at the gift bag in his hand. It suddenly felt foolish. He returned to the roadside and sat on a low wall for some minutes, trying to think clearly. 5 years of trust stood before him like a tall building, yet one strange phone call had cracked its walls. He called again after some time. No answer. He sent a message. "I am back home. Please call me. I came for us." No reply came. Richard lifted his luggage again and decided to go to his family home. "Let me see Mama first. Maybe Gloria will call later and explain everything." He hired another taxi. During the ride, he no longer noticed the lively streets. His mind was busy and troubled. He replayed Gloria's voice again and again. It had not sounded joyful. It had sounded afraid. Why? He remembered the neighbor saying she left years ago. Why had she hidden that from him? Why had she not shared her new address? Why had she hung up? Questions gathered like storm clouds, but he still hoped answers would clear them. When the taxi reached his family house, Richard's mother was sitting outside on a chair under the shade. Age had touched her more deeply in 5 years. Her hair was grayer. Her body looked smaller. But when she saw Richard stepping from the taxi, she screamed his name and struggled to rise quickly. Richard dropped his bag and ran to her. They embraced tightly. She cried into his shoulder. He held her like a child holds home after being lost. My son, she kept saying through tears. Richard's own eyes filled. Mama, I am back, he whispered. I am back. Neighbors heard the noise and gathered smiling. Some greeted him warmly. Some praised God for safe return. Richard brought in the bags and opened gifts for his mother. She touched the clothes with shaking hands and cried again. You suffered too much, she said. Look at all you brought. Richard smiled gently. It is nothing, Mama. You deserve more. For a short while, joy lived in the house. Food was prepared. Water was brought. Relatives were called. Richard washed, changed clothes, and sat near his mother while she stared at him as if afraid he might disappear again. But under the warmth of reunion, the cold questions remained. At last, unable to hold them any longer, Richard asked softly, Mama, where is Gloria? I went to her old place first. They said she moved. His mother's face changed at once. The brightness there dimmed. She looked down at her hands. Richard noticed immediately. Mama, he said more slowly now. She sighed deeply. My son, she paused as if choosing careful words. That girl has not visited this house for years. Richard blinked. Years? Yes, she said quietly. At first she used to come small. Then she stopped. Richard leaned forward. But she always told me she checked on you. His mother shook her head. No, we only heard stories from her on phone sometimes. Richard felt his chest tighten. Did you ask her why? His mother nodded sadly. Many times. She always had reasons. Busy, far, sickness, work. Richard's voice dropped. Why didn't you tell me? The old woman touched his hand. I did not want to trouble your mind while you were suffering there. I hoped it was misunderstanding. Richard pulled in a slow breath. Did you know she moved? We heard rumors, his mother said. One day I sent your uncle with me to check her place. We got there and they told us she no longer stayed there. Richard stared at her, unable to speak for some moments. And she never told me, he finally whispered. His mother shook her head again. No. The room became very quiet. Sounds from outside seemed far away. Richard's mind rushed through years of phone calls, messages, promises, photos and plans. He remembered every time Gloria said she was handling the building project, every time she said she visited his mother, every time she spoke with calm confidence. His stomach turned. Maybe there's an explanation, he said weakly, almost to himself. Maybe, but the sentence died unfinished. His mother looked at him with pain. My son, I prayed it was nothing serious, but my heart has not rested about that girl. Richard stood and began to pace slowly. The walls of the room felt close. He took out his phone and called Gloria again. No answer. Again, no answer. Again, switched off. He sent another message with trembling fingers. I am at my mother's house. Please come. We need to talk. No reply. He lowered the phone and stared ahead. The homecoming he had dreamed of suddenly felt heavy, dark and unfamiliar. His mother rose slowly and touched his shoulder. Sit down, she said gently. You just arrived. Rest first. Richard obeyed, but his body moved like a man in shock. He sat with elbows on knees and face in his hands. His mother rubbed his back as she did when he was a child. Whatever it is, she whispered, we will face it. Richard said nothing. Inside him, joy was collapsing room by room. He had landed in hope that morning. By evening, he sat in dread, surrounded by silence, holding questions no one had answered. Days passed after Richard returned to Nigeria, but they did not pass with peace. Each morning, he woke in his mother's house hoping to see missed calls or messages from Gloria. Each morning, his phone remained silent. He called her many times every day. Sometimes the line rang without answer. Sometimes it was switched off. Sometimes it ended quickly. No explanation came. No apology came. No sign of the woman he had trusted for 5 long years came. Richard moved around the house like a man carrying stones inside his chest. His mother watched him with worry. She tried to feed him, but he ate little. She tried to make conversation, but his thoughts always returned to the same place. At night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying memories that now felt false. He remembered the fake joy in her voice on calls, the pictures she sent, the promises she made, the plans they discussed. He remembered standing in cold streets abroad and smiling because he believed she was waiting. Now, every memory had become sharp. He wanted truth, even if truth would wound him. One afternoon, Richard decided to walk through the old neighborhood to clear his mind. The sun was high. Children played football in dusty open space. Women sold fruits by the roadside. Men argued over politics near a kiosk. Life moved normally around him, but inside him, nothing was normal. He walked slowly, hands in pocket, head bent. He had lost weight from stress since returning. His face looked tired. As he turned near a small shop, someone called his name loudly. "Richard! Richard!" He looked up and saw an old friend named Tony hurrying toward him with surprise on his face. They had grown up in the same area and once spent many evenings together before life separated them. Tony embraced him warmly. "My brother! You are back? When did you come?" Richard forced a smile. "Some days ago." Tony stepped back and studied him. "But why are you looking like this? You should be shining. You came from abroad." Richard tried to laugh, but the sound was weak. Life is not always as people think. Tony's face softened. "What happened?" They moved to a quiet bench under a tree near the roadside. Richard hesitated at first, then spoke because pain was already too full inside him. He told Tony everything. How he had worked abroad for 5 years, sent money home every month, trusted Gloria to build their future, returned without telling her because he wanted to surprise her, found her old apartment empty, called her and got strange answers, then learned from his mother that Gloria had not visited in years. Tony listened silently, his expression changing little by little. When Richard finished, Tony did not speak at once. He looked away, then rubbed his palms together. Richard noticed the discomfort. "Tony," he said slowly, "you know something." Tony sighed deeply. "Richard," he paused again. "I did not want to be the one to say it." Richard's heartbeat quickened. "Say what?" He looked at him with pity. "People have been talking for some time. Gloria does not live alone. She stays with another man." Richard stared at him, unable to blink. "No," he said quietly, as if refusing air itself. Tony nodded sadly. "And they have a child together." The world around Richard seemed to stop. Sounds became distant. Heat vanished from the afternoon. He sat frozen, hearing the words but unable to place them inside reality. Another man. A child. For a moment, he thought he might faint. Tony reached out. "Richard!" But Richard pulled a breath that felt too heavy to carry. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice shaking. Tony swallowed. "I would never lie about this. I have seen them. Many people know." Richard's eyes filled, but he held the tears back by force. "Where?" he asked. Tony hesitated. "My brother, maybe rest first. This matter..." Richard interrupted sharply. "Where?" Tony saw that truth had already entered and could not be removed. He gave an address in another part of town. Richard stood immediately. His legs felt weak, but determination held them upright. Tony rose too. "Do you want me to come with you?" Richard shook his head. "No." "Richard, calm down. Do not do anything foolish." Richard looked at him with hollow eyes. "I only want to see with my own eyes." He thanked Tony quietly and walked away before emotion could break him in public. The journey to the address felt endless. Richard took a taxi but barely noticed the roads. He sat stiffly, hands clenched, mind racing through years of sacrifice. He remembered sending money while skipping meals. He remembered nights washing dishes with swollen fingers. He remembered defending Gloria whenever anyone warned him about distance. He remembered praying for her. He remembered buying gifts now still lying unopened in his mother's house. Every memory became a knife. Part of him still hoped Tony was mistaken. Part of him begged for any misunderstanding that could save what remained of his heart. The taxi stopped before a modest compound with faded walls and a metal gate left partly open. Richard paid and stood outside for a moment, trying to steady himself. He looked at the house where truth waited. His legs felt heavy as stone. As last, he walked in. He reached the front door and knocked. Once, twice. Footsteps moved inside. The door opened. Gloria stood there. For 1 second, nobody moved. Shock drained all color from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The bowl she held nearly slipped from her hands. Richard looked at her as if seeing a ghost made from memory and betrayal. She looked healthier, fuller, dressed like a settled woman in another life. The sight alone wounded him. "Richard," she finally whispered. Before she could speak again, quick little footsteps sounded from inside the house. A small boy of about 2 years ran toward the door laughing. He wrapped his tiny arms around Gloria's legs and looked up at her. "Mama," he said brightly. Richard's heart broke in that single moment. No scream could have hurt more. No slap could have cut deeper. That child was innocent, but his existence announced everything words had hidden. Every hope Richard carried home, every lonely night abroad, every coin he sent, every promise he believed collapsed before his eyes. He gripped the door frame to steady himself. Gloria bent quickly and lifted the child into her arms, tears already spilling down her cheeks. Richard could hardly breathe. His chest rose and fell like a man drowning on dry land. "Who is this child?" he asked, though he knew. Gloria cried harder. "Richard, please." "Who is this child?" he repeated, voice breaking. "Mine," she whispered. Richard laughed once, a painful, empty sound. "Yours?" He pointed weakly around the room. "And this house? This life? This is what you are building with my money?" Gloria shook her head and sobbed. "Please listen." Richard stepped inside slowly. The room held furniture, electronics, curtains, household items, small comforts bought somehow. Toys lay in one corner. Children's clothes hung on a chair. Evidence of a family life stood everywhere. Richard looked around like a stranger in a dream. 5 years, he said softly. 5 years I suffered. Gloria placed the child down and told him to go inside. The boy ran to another room, unaware of storms made by adults. Gloria turned back, trembling. "Richard, I was lonely." Richard stared at her. "Lonely? You were gone too long," she cried. "At first I waited. I tried. But years passed. I was alone all the time. I needed someone near me. I needed help. I needed comfort." Richard's eyes widened in disbelief. "So, loneliness gave you another man? Loneliness spent my money? Loneliness gave birth?" Gloria covered her face. "I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" Richard's voice rose, then fell again from exhaustion. "A mistake is missing a turn on the road. This is betrayal built brick by brick." Gloria sank onto a chair crying. "I did not plan it like this." Richard stood over years of ruins. "Then tell me one thing true today, just one. The house, where is it?" Gloria could not look at him. Silence answered first. Then she whispered, "There is no house." Richard closed his eyes. "Say it clearly." "There is no house," she repeated through tears. "Nothing was built." He opened his eyes slowly. "The pictures? Fake. The videos? Edited. The land? There is none." Richard's knees nearly failed him. He sat heavily on another chair and stared at the floor. He felt stripped of breath, pride, and strength at once. "The money?" he asked after a long silence. "All the money I sent for 5 years. Where is it?" Gloria cried harder. "Gone. Gone where? We used it. Rent, living, things, hospital, clothes, problems. I don't even know all again." Richard looked up at her with tears finally falling freely. "You don't know?" His voice was barely sound now. "I counted every coin there. I walked in snow. I bled at work. I slept hungry some nights. I wore torn shoes. I sent my future to you, and you say you don't know?" Gloria crawled closer and reached toward him, but he moved back. "Please forgive me," she begged. "I know I wronged you. I know, but I was weak. I was foolish." Richard shook his head slowly. "No, you were cruel." She sobbed louder. "I still cared for you." Richard laughed again, broken and bitter. "Cared for me? While lying every month? While another man ate from my sweat? While you sent me fake walls to keep me walking?" He pressed both hands to his face. His whole body trembled. Gloria watched him with fear because she had never seen pain look so quiet. After some moments, he lowered his hands. His eyes were red and empty. "Do you know what kept me alive there?" he asked. "Hope. Hope that one day I would come home to truth. Hope that the woman I loved was faithful. Hope that suffering had meaning. You stole even that." Gloria crawled closer again. "Richard, please. I am sorry. I am truly sorry." Richard stood abruptly and stepped away, unable to bear her touch. "Sorry cannot return 5 years. Sorry cannot rebuild trust. Sorry cannot give me back the man I was before this door opened." The child's laughter sounded faintly from inside another room, innocent and unaware. Richard looked toward the sound and tears rolled again. He was not angry at the child. He was mourning the life he thought he had been building. Gloria wept openly, but her tears could not lift the weight of betrayal now crushing the room. Richard stood there, barely able to breathe beneath it. Richard stood in the sitting room of the house, like a man whose soul had been emptied. The air felt heavy around him. Gloria was still crying near the chair where she had fallen, her shoulders shaking, her face wet with regret that had come too late. From the inner room came the soft sounds of a child playing with something on the floor, unaware that the adults around him were standing inside the ruins of truth. Richard's eyes moved slowly across the room again. The television on the wall, the fan turning lazily above them, the curtains, the polished center table, the decorated shelves, the framed photos placed carelessly near the wall. Every item seemed to speak to him. Every object looked like it had been bought with hours from his life. He remembered nights abroad when his hands were swollen from work. He remembered eating dry bread because he wanted to send more money home. He remembered turning down simple joys because he believed sacrifice was planting seeds for tomorrow. Now, tomorrow stood before him wearing another man's shoes. Richard tried to breathe steadily, but pain moved through his chest like fire. Gloria looked up at him through tears. "Please sit down," she begged weakly. "Please, let us talk calmly." Richard did not answer. His calm was no longer peace. It was shock. He had gone beyond shouting, beyond rage, beyond confusion. What remained was something colder and heavier. It was the feeling of a man who had finally seen the truth and knew nothing could return to what it was. He heard footsteps from inside the house. Slow, relaxed footsteps. Then a man appeared from the hallway, adjusting his shirt as if nothing serious was happening. Colin walked into the room with the careless confidence of someone used to comfort he did not earn. He was tall, neat, and casually dressed. He looked first at Gloria, then at Richard, then back again. He did not appear ashamed. He did not appear surprised enough. He looked more annoyed than guilty, like a man interrupted during an ordinary afternoon. "Who is this?" Colin asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Gloria wiped her face quickly. "Colin," she said in a trembling voice, "this is Richard." Colin's expression changed, only slightly. He studied Richard from head to toe. Richard looked back at him in silence. There he was, the man who slept in peace while another man walked in pain. The man who ate from plates Richard unknowingly filled. The man who wore clothes bought from another person's trust. Richard expected anger to rise when he finally saw him. Instead, what came was disgust. Deep, quiet disgust. Not only for Colin, but for the whole arrangement that had reduced love into a money source and loyalty into foolishness. Colin leaned against the wall carelessly. "So you are the one abroad," he said. Richard said nothing. Gloria stood quickly. "Please stop. This is not the time." Colin ignored her. "I have heard your name before." Richard's jaw tightened. Still, he remained silent. He looked at Colin and understood something painful. He had not been treated as a fiancé, a future husband, or a loved man. He had been treated as a distant provider, a machine that sent money, a name attached to transfers, a body far away whose feelings did not matter because it was not present in the room. That realization cut deeper than even the lies. Colin walked toward the table and picked up a bottle of water. He drank slowly, then asked Gloria, "Why are you crying like this?" Gloria stared at him in disbelief. "Why am I crying?" she repeated. "Look at what has happened." Colin shrugged. "What has happened? He came, he knows, so what now?" Richard finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "So this is the man." Colin turned to him. "And what if I am?" Richard took one slow breath. "Nothing. I only wanted to see the face of the person living the life I paid for." The room became still. Gloria covered her mouth and sobbed harder. Colin frowned. "Mind your words." Richard looked at him with cold clarity. "My words are kind compared to truth." Colin stepped forward slightly, but Gloria rushed between them. "Please, no fight, please." Richard lifted a hand gently. There would be no fight. He meant it. Colin was not worth blood, prison, or noise. Richard's pain was too deep for small violence. He looked again around the room. He noticed a pair of men's shoes near the door, a wristwatch on the shelf, toys scattered near a rug, signs of ordinary life, signs of a home built on hidden theft. Gloria tried again to speak to Richard. "I know I wronged you, but please let us talk. We can fix something." Richard turned slowly toward her. "Fix?" he asked. "Can you fix 5 years? Can you fix trust? Can you fix the nights I cried alone and still sent money because I believed in you?" Gloria had no answer. Tears were the only language left to her. Richard nodded sadly. "Exactly." The little boy ran out from the inner room holding a toy car. He stopped when he saw the adult standing tense and silent. He looked at Gloria, then at Colin, then at Richard. He did not understand pain. He only felt atmosphere. He walked to Gloria and held her leg. She lifted him quickly and kissed his head while crying. Richard looked away. He could not hate the child. Innocence should never carry adult sin. But seeing the child held by the woman he once dreamed would carry his own children felt like another wound opening. Colin's eyes followed Richard's gaze. Then he spoke with his sharp edge. "If you came for drama, finish it and go. We have our life here." Richard looked at him for a long moment. "Your life?" he said quietly. "You mean the life financed by another man?" Colin's face hardened. "Watch yourself." Richard almost smiled, but it was a smile full of sorrow. "I watched myself for 5 years. I denied myself food, rest, joy, comfort. I watched myself become tired so strangers could feel rich." Gloria cried out, "Please stop." Richard ignored both of them now. He was speaking more to himself than to them. I thought I was sending money to build walls, rooms, future. I was sending it to build lies. Colin scoffed. No one forced you. The words landed like insult on open wounds. Gloria gasped. Colin! But Richard did not explode. Instead, something final settled inside him. He realized there was no depth too low for people who feed on another person's sacrifice without shame. He also realized that arguing would only drag him lower into their mess. He straightened his shoulders. The brokenness remained, but dignity rose beside it. He picked up the small gift bag he had placed near the chair when he entered. It still held the perfume and jewelry meant for Gloria. He looked at it, then placed it back down on the table. These are useless here, he said softly. Gloria cried harder. Richard! He did not respond to his name. That name had been used too cheaply in this house. He turned and began walking toward the door. Gloria rushed after him, carrying the child on one arm. Please, don't go like this. Please listen to me. Richard stopped at the doorway but did not turn around. I listened for 5 years, he said. I heard enough. Gloria's knees weakened. I am sorry, she whispered. Richard finally looked back once. His eyes were full of tears, but also something stronger than tears. Clarity. You are sorry because truth arrived, he said, not because lies began. She could not deny it. He stepped outside into the afternoon light. The sun was bright, almost cruel in how normal the world remained. Birds still moved across the sky. Neighbors still swept compounds. A motorcycle passed. Somewhere a radio played music. Yet Richard felt as though he had aged many years in 1 hour. Behind him, voices rose inside the house. Colin's tone had changed immediately. There was worry in it now, sharp and practical. So that was him, he asked. Gloria said nothing at first. Answer me, Colin demanded. Yes, she whispered. And he is gone, Colin asked. Yes. A pause followed. Then the truth of Colin's heart showed itself plainly. Then what now, he said. If that man stops sending money, how do we survive? Richard stood outside the open doorway, hearing every word. Each sentence confirmed what he already knew. This was never love. It was consumption. Gloria began crying again. Please, not now. Colin continued, restless and irritated. I am serious. Rent is due soon. Food is not free. Child needs things. What are we going to do? Gloria's voice shook. We will figure it out. Colin laughed bitterly. You will figure it out. I did not ask for suffering. Richard closed his eyes for a moment. The humiliation was complete. Not only had he been betrayed, he had been discussed as income, a source, a pipeline now cut off. He could hear Gloria pleading softly inside. He could hear Colin pacing, but he did not turn back. Some pain is too deep to witness twice. He stepped outside the open doorway into the afternoon light. His legs moved slowly at first, then steadier. Each step hurt, but each step also carried him away from deception. He did not know yet what healing would look like. He did not know how long trust would remain broken. He did not know how to explain everything to his mother without breaking down. But he knew one thing with certainty. If he stayed there 1 minute longer, he would lose the last pieces of himself. As he walked, tears finally rolled down his face openly. He did not wipe them. Let people stare if they wanted. Let strangers see a grown man crying on the road. They did not know the grave he had just buried. He remembered the first day he left Nigeria with dreams. He remembered the promises spoken at the bus park. He remembered saying he would return for love. Now he was returning from its funeral. A young boy selling sachet water approached him and asked if he wanted one. Richard nodded, bought 2, drank one immediately, and handed the other back to the boy. The child smiled and ran off. Such small innocence touched him strangely. The world still contained goodness somewhere. He kept walking without looking back once. Behind him, inside that house, Gloria stood trapped between guilt and fear. Colleen stood trapped between laziness and hunger. Their shelter had walls, but it had no foundation. Lies never build lasting homes. Richard, though broken, still had something they did not. Truth. And with truth, even shattered men can begin again. Richard walked back to his mother's house like a man returning from a burial. The road was the same road he had used many times as a young man. Yet that afternoon it felt different under his feet. Every step was heavy. Dust rose around his shoes, but he hardly noticed. People passed him, talking, laughing, carrying goods, living ordinary lives, but their voices sounded far away. His eyes were red. Tears had already fallen on the road, but more still gathered, because pain was not finished with him. He had carried those tears inside for years without knowing it. They were tears from lonely nights abroad, from hunger hidden behind pride, from hope stretched too long, and now from betrayal finally exposed. The sun was still high, but Richard felt cold inside. He remembered how he had left the same streets years earlier with dreams. Then he had walked with excitement, promising himself he would return successful and happy. Now he returned with truth instead of triumph. When he reached the compound of his mother's house, he stopped at the gate for a moment and held the metal bar with trembling fingers. He did not know how to enter carrying such brokenness. Inside, he could hear pots moving in the kitchen area and the soft sound of a radio. Life was continuing there, unaware that his heart had been torn open. He wiped his face quickly, but fresh tears came again. At last, he pushed the gate and entered. His mother was seated on a low stool sorting vegetables into a tray. When she looked up and saw him, she knew immediately that something terrible had happened. A mother often knows pain before words arrive. She rose quickly despite her age. "Richard," she called softly. "My son." He tried to answer, but his voice broke before sound came. He took 2 steps toward her and then collapsed to his knees like a child. The tears he had held back for too long burst out fully. His shoulders shook, his chest heaved, he covered his face with both hands and wept from a place deeper than pride. His mother rushed to him and held his head against her body. "Cry," she whispered. "Cry, my son. Let it come out." Richard cried harder. Years of strain poured through him. The old woman stroked his hair slowly, tears entering her own eyes as she listened to the sound of her son breaking. She had carried him as a baby, fed him, prayed over him, watched him grow into a hard-working man, and now she watched him shattered by the person he trusted most. They remained like that for a long time in the open compound, mother standing, son kneeling, grief moving between them. At last she helped him rise and guided him inside. She sat him on the bed in her room, brought water and placed a cloth in his hand. "Drink first," she said gently. Richard obeyed like a tired child. His hands shook so much that some water spilled. She sat beside him and waited. She did not rush him. Silence can be messy when words are too heavy. After a few minutes, Richard took a long breath and stared at the floor. "Mama," he said, voice rough from crying, "everything was a lie." She placed her hand over his. "Tell me slowly." And he did. He told her everything. He told her how he met an old friend who knew the truth. He told her how Gloria lived with another man. He told her there was a child who ran to her calling her mother. He told her about the fake photos, the edited videos, the false updates about builders and land. He told her the house did not exist. He told her the money was gone. He told her another man had eaten from his sweat and slept under comfort bought by his sacrifice. He told her about standing in that room feeling like his years had been stolen. He spoke in waves, sometimes calm, sometimes shaking, sometimes stopping because tears blocked his throat. His mother listened quietly through all of it. She did not interrupt except to pass him water or touch his shoulder when pain became too sharp. Her own face carried sorrow, but she remained steady for him. When he finished, the room became very still. Outside, birds moved on the roof and children shouted in the distance. Inside, a mother and son sat beside the wreckage of trust. Richard leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I feel foolish," he said. "I feel empty. I feel like I threw 5 years into a pit." His mother turned to face him fully. "Look at me," she said. He lifted his eyes slowly. "You are not foolish because you loved. You are not empty because someone stole from you. And you did not throw your years into a pit." Richard frowned weakly. "Then what were those years?" She answered with calm strength. "They were years you proved the kind of man you are." Richard shook his head. "What kind of man gets used like this?" His mother squeezed his hand. A good man can be cheated. It does not make him less good. A clean cup can hold dirty water and still be washed clean again. Richard looked away, tears gathering once more. Mama, I trusted her with everything. Yes, she said softly, and trust given to the wrong person hurts deeply. But listen to me carefully. Betrayal does not reduce the value of the betrayed person. Richard was silent. She continued, speaking slowly so every word could enter his pain. If someone steals from a shop, the goods did not become worthless. The thief only showed their own character. If someone lies to a faithful man, the faithful man did not become cheap. The liar only showed their own poverty inside. Richard swallowed hard. But I feel ashamed. Shame belongs to those who deceived you, she replied firmly, not to you. Those words struck something hidden in him. He had been carrying not only pain, but shame, as if being betrayed meant he had failed as a man. His mother saw this and refused to let him keep it. You worked honestly, she said. You sent money with clean hands. You denied yourself comfort for love. You remained faithful when nobody watched you. Those things are precious. Do not throw them away because another person was greedy. Richard's tears fell again, but now they carried relief mixed with sorrow. I am tired, Mama, he whispered. I know. You are tired in body and spirit, but tired people can rest. Broken people can heal. He shook his head slowly. How do I trust again? She smiled sadly. Today is not for tomorrow's questions. Today is for breathing. Tomorrow can wait. Richard almost smiled through tears. That was how mothers often speak. Simple words carrying deep wisdom. She stood and went to the kitchen area, then returned with warm food she had prepared earlier. She placed it before him. Eat. I am not hungry. Eat, she repeated gently but firmly. Pain grows louder in an empty body. Richard obeyed. At first, each bite felt difficult. Then hunger he had ignored all day woke inside him. His mother watched until he finished most of the plate. She nodded with quiet satisfaction and took it away. When she returned, she sat near him again. Tell me about abroad, she said unexpectedly. Richard looked confused. Why? Because your whole life is not this woman, she answered. I want to hear the parts of you that existed before today. Slowly, Richard began speaking of work abroad. Cold mornings, factory noise, long buses, men from different countries, learning new ways, surviving winters, sending money home, praying alone, helping co-workers, saving carefully. As he spoke, he remembered he was more than betrayed love. He was also endurance, discipline, courage, labor, and growth. His mother listened proudly. You see, she said when he paused, you did not only lose, you also built yourself. Richard considered this quietly. It was true. Pain had made him forget his own strength. Evening approached. Shadows lengthened through the window. His mother lit a lamp when power went out briefly, then laughed softly when it returned. Even light knows how to come back, she said. Richard smiled properly for the first time since seeing Gloria. The smile was small and tired but real. Later, some neighbors came to greet him, but his mother told them he was resting. She gathered his wounded spirit like a gatekeeper. She brought him tea and sat beside him while the night deepened. Do not go and fight anyone, she warned. Do not go and beg anyone. Do not go and destroy yourself with drink or anger. Let those who did wrong carry their own load. Richard nodded slowly. I wanted to shout at the man, he admitted, but I walked away. Pride warmed her face. Good. A goat enjoys dragging people into mud because it lives there. A man should keep walking. Richard laughed weakly through his nose. Mama and your sayings. They are old because they are true, she replied. Then her expression softened again. My son, listen carefully. Do not let one greedy person make you hate all women. Do not let one liar make you hate love. Pain can become poison if you drink it too long. Richard looked down. I don't know what I feel now. You do not need to know tonight, she said. Just rest. Feel later. They prayed together before sleep. His mother thanked God for bringing him home alive, even wounded. She asked for healing, wisdom, and peace. Richard cried quietly during the prayer, but the tears were gentler now. Afterward, she spread bedding for him in the room near hers, refusing to let him sleep alone that night. "If sorrow wakes you, call me," she said. He lay down in the familiar house of his childhood. The ceiling fan turned slowly above him. Night sounds from the neighborhood drifted in. For the first time since returning, his body began to loosen. The pain had not vanished, the betrayal still burned, the money was still gone, the dreams were still broken, but inside the safety of his mother's presence, something else had begun. Release. He no longer had to carry everything alone. He no longer had to pretend strength. He closed his eyes and remembered her words. Betrayal does not reduce the value of the betrayed person. He repeated them silently until sleep came. Though wounded deeply, Richard still had dignity, strength, and the chance to rebuild. Weeks later, Richard returned abroad to continue his life, but he did not leave Nigeria as the same man who had arrived with gifts and hope. He left quietly, with fewer words and heavier eyes. At the airport, his mother hugged him for a long time and prayed over him again. She told him to keep working, keep living, and not let bitterness own his future. Richard nodded, but something inside him had closed. He was still respectful, still calm, still hardworking, but the soft place where trust once lived now had a locked door. During the flight, he did not imagine reunion scenes like before. He did not smile at clouds or whisper plans to himself. He simply stared ahead and thought of survival. When he reached the foreign country, co-workers welcomed him back warmly, but many noticed he had changed. He laughed less, he spoke less, he worked even more than before. He no longer kept Gloria's photo by his bed. He removed it quietly and placed it in a drawer without ceremony. He sent money only to his mother now and kept his personal life private. If anyone asked about marriage plans, he would give a short answer and change the subject. Pain had turned him careful. While Richard rebuilt himself far away, Gloria's world back in Nigeria began to crumble with frightening speed. The day Richard walked out of that house had seemed like only one painful moment, but it was also the day the hidden engine of their comfort stopped. For years, money arrived like rain from a sky they did not deserve. Food was bought, rent was paid, clothes were changed, phones were upgraded, outings happened, small luxuries came and went. Colin had enjoyed all of it, without carrying the burden that created it. Now, the rain had ended and the ground beneath them started to crack. At first, Gloria tried to pretend everything could continue. She still had a little money left in her account. She still had some jewelry and clothes. She still hoped Richard might calm down one day and send something again, or at least speak to her. She called his number many times during the first week after he left again, but he did not answer. She sent messages full of apology. No reply came. She cried often, but tears did not buy food. Pauline noticed the silence quickly. One evening, he returned home and asked, "Did that man call?" Gloria was feeding the child and avoided his eyes. No. Colin clicked his tongue. What kind of stubbornness is that? Gloria looked at him in disbelief. Stubbornness? After what happened? Colin shrugged. People forgive. Keep trying. The selfishness in his voice caught her deeply. She remembered how charming he once sounded. Now charm was gone, and need was speaking plainly. Days passed. Grocery supplies reduced. Electricity bills were delayed. The internet subscription ended. Colin became restless. He wanted the old ease back. He wanted the comfort without the cost. "There is no meat again," he complained one afternoon while opening pots. Gloria answered tiredly, "Money is low." "Then withdraw from your savings." "There is no savings." Colin turned sharply. "What do you mean, no savings?" Gloria's face hardened with shame and anger. "We spent everything. You know that." He scoffed. "How can you people send money for years and nothing remain?" Gloria stared at him. "You people," she repeated slowly. "Were you not here eating it?" Colin rolled his eyes and walked out. Such arguments became common. What once sounded like laughter in the house became doors banging, sharp words, and long silences. The child, too young to understand, sensed tension and became clingy. He cried more. He wanted his mother constantly. Gloria held him and wondered how her life had fallen so quickly. She began selling some personal items quietly. First went small accessories, then shoes she rarely wore, then a phone she had once proudly shown friends. Each sale brought only small money. It disappeared into food, diapers, transport, and bills. Colin contributed little. He always had reasons. Work is slow. A friend has not paid me. I am expecting money. This week is bad. Gloria had heard these lines before, but had ignored them when Richard's transfers still covered reality. Now she saw clearly that Colin was a man built on excuses. One morning, she woke early and asked him directly, "What work are you really doing?" Colin frowned from the bed. "What kind of question is that?" "A serious one," she replied. "This house is sinking. I need to know what man I am with." He sat up angrily. "Mind how you talk to me. Then answer." "I hustle." "Hustle what?" He threw the blanket aside and stood. "Do not insult me because money is tight." Gloria laughed bitterly. "Money is tight because there was never a real man here." The words landed hard. Colin slapped the wall beside her head, making the child wake and cry. Gloria jumped back shocked. Colin pointed a finger at her. "Do not push me." It was the first time she saw open violence in him, and fear entered the room like smoke. From then on, hostility grew faster. Colin stayed out late. He returned irritated. He snapped at small things. If the child cried too long, he shouted. If food was simple, he complained. If Gloria asked about bills, he accused her of nagging. She began to understand a cruel truth. When easy money covered a bad character, she had mistaken comfort for love. Without comfort, the character stood naked. Neighbors heard their quarrels sometimes. Women outside would exchange looks when voices rose. Gloria felt shame pressing from every side. Once admired for her nice clothes and apparent settled life, she now borrowed seasoning from neighbors and avoided eye contact. She remembered Richard's steady voice, his patience, his respect. She remembered how he never shouted at her even when tired abroad. Memory became punishment. One afternoon, while washing clothes by hand because she could no longer afford laundry services, Gloria sat on a stool and cried silently over the basin. The child played nearby with a broken toy car. Soap water mixed with tears. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. She was not only mourning lost money, she was mourning the man she had betrayed, the future she had thrown away, and the false life she had chosen instead. But regret does not reverse decisions. It only arrives after consequences. Rent soon became the next storm. The landlord, a strict middle-aged man who liked prompt payment, knocked one evening with a notebook in hand. Gloria opened the door nervously. "Madam," he said, "you are owing 2 months now." "Please, sir, give me small time," she begged. "I am arranging money." He looked past her into the room and saw the television, the fan, and signs of former comfort. "When money was flowing, did you remember future?" he asked bluntly. Gloria lowered her eyes. "Please, sir." He sighed. 1 week, last warning. When she shut the door, Colin was sitting on the chair scrolling through his phone. "Did you hear?" she asked. "Yes," he replied without looking up. "Then what are we going to do? You are the one talking to him." Gloria stared in disbelief. "Our rent, Colin." He finally looked up. "Do not put everything on me." "Then on who? The child?" He stood angrily. "I am tired of this house stress." Gloria laughed bitterly. House stress started when free money stopped. He stormed out. That night, he did not return until morning. Gloria sat awake with the child sleeping on her lap, listening to dogs bark outside and wondering if this was the same man she once chose over loyalty. The week passed quickly. No miracle came. Gloria tried calling friends for help. Some ignored her. Some had heard stories and kept distance. Some promised later. Colin avoided the issue. Then one day he came home with a small bag and strange calmness. Gloria noticed immediately. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Out," he said. "With a bag?" "Yes." "For how long?" He shrugged. "Some days." Fear rose in her chest. "Colin, rent is due. We need to talk." He zipped the bag. "Talk to who? I am tired." "Tired of what?" she demanded. "Of suffering, of noise, of responsibility that is not mine." Gloria stepped back as if struck. "Not yours. This is your child." He glanced toward the boy playing on the floor. "I did not ask for this life." "You enjoyed the money," she cried. "You enjoyed the house, the food, the clothes." He opened the door. "That time has passed." Gloria ran to block him. "You cannot leave me like this." He moved her aside roughly. "Watch me." The child began crying from the tension. Gloria held the door frame and begged, "Please, even if not for me, for your son." Colin looked annoyed rather than moved. "I will see him later." Then he walked out carrying his bag and did not look back. Gloria stood frozen in the doorway. The child cried louder behind her. Neighbors pretended not to watch. She closed the door slowly and slid to the floor, weeping with the child in her arms. Days turned into desperate survival. Colin stopped answering calls consistently. Sometimes he switched off his phone. Sometimes he sent short messages. Busy. Later. No money. Gloria realized he was gone in truth, not just distance. She sold more things. The television went first, then the extra fan, then kitchen items. Still, it was not enough. The landlord returned with 2 men. "Madam, enough is enough," he said firmly. "Today you pack." Gloria begged again. "Please, sir, 1 more week. I have a child." He remained unmoved. "You should have thought of child before death." She cried openly. "I have nowhere to go." "That is not my problem," he said. "My house is not charity." The men began carrying items outside. Neighbors watched from doorways. Some pitied her, some judged her, some remembered how proudly she once moved around. Humiliation burned through her body. She packed clothes into bags with shaking hands while her child clung to her wrapper crying. By afternoon, she stood outside with 2 bags, a child, and nowhere to sleep. The woman who once wasted another person's sweat now had nowhere to rest her own head. She sat on one bag by the roadside as evening approached. Cars passed. People hurried home. Her son slept against her shoulder from exhaustion. Gloria stared ahead in silence. For the first time, there was no lie left to hide behind. No edited video, no sweet words, no expensive dress, no provider abroad, no boyfriend at her side. Only truth remained. She finally understood that people attracted by money often disappear when money ends. What she had called love had only been convenience dressed in sweet words. With nowhere else to turn, Gloria spent one more restless night in a crowded room borrowed from a distant acquaintance who allowed her to stay only because of the child. The room was hot, the mattress thin, and mosquitoes moved in the dark. Her little boy slept beside her with one hand on her wrapper, trusting her completely. Gloria did not sleep. She stared at the ceiling and listened to the sound of other people breathing in nearby rooms. Shame sat on her chest like a weight. Her bags were near the wall, holding the few things left from the life she once displayed proudly. She remembered the house she had lost, the clothes she had sold, the man who had walked away, and the man she had betrayed years before. Again and again, one thought returned to her. Richard had loved her honestly. She had destroyed that love with her own hands. Before dawn, she rose quietly, washed her face, dressed simply, and packed the child's clothes. She tied him to her back for the journey and picked up one bag in each hand. There was only one place left in her mind where mercy might still live: Richard's mother's house. The road there felt longer than it used to. The sun rose slowly as she moved through streets that once knew her as a woman with money, neat hair, and confident steps. Now she moved with tired eyes, worn sandals, and fear in her stomach. She hoped the older woman might at least help her reach Richard. She hoped apology might still open something. She hoped for far more than she deserved. When Gloria reached the compound of Richard's family home, she stopped at the gate. Her hands trembled. She had not entered there in many years. Once, she had promised to become part of that family. Once, she had smiled in that yard and received kindness. Then she disappeared when money became easier elsewhere. Now, she stood outside like a beggar, carrying consequences. She pushed the gate gently and entered. Richard's mother was sweeping the compound with slow, careful strokes. Age had bent her a little more, but her eyes remained sharp. When she looked up and saw Gloria standing there with a child on her back and bags in her hands, surprise froze her where she stood. The broom paused in the air. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. The older woman's face showed shock first, then pain, then guarded understanding. "Gloria," she said at last. Gloria dropped the bags and rushed forward, falling to her knees before the old woman. Tears burst from her immediately. "Mama, please forgive me," she cried. "Please forgive me." Richard's mother stepped back slightly, still holding the broom. "Stand up from there," she said quietly. Gloria shook her head and kept crying. "I have wronged all of you, I know. Please help me. I am suffering." The child, startled by his mother's sobbing, began crying too. Richard's mother looked at the little boy, then at Gloria, then sighed deeply. "Come inside first. Do not make noise outside." She was not welcoming her warmly, but neither was she heartless enough to leave a crying child in the sun. Inside the sitting room, Gloria sat on the floor despite being told to use a chair. Her tears would not stop. The child sat near her legs, rubbing his eyes. Richard's mother brought water and placed it on the table. She remained standing for a moment, studying the woman who had once been trusted. "Why have you come after many years?" she asked finally. Gloria wiped her face with trembling hands. "Mama, I have tried to call Richard many times. He does not answer. I sent messages. Nothing. Please help me talk to him." The old woman's face hardened. "Now you remember Richard?" Gloria bowed her head. "I know I do not deserve help, but please." Richard's mother sat down slowly, opposite her. "When my son was abroad walking himself sick, did you remember him then?" Gloria cried harder. "I made terrible mistakes. When you stopped coming to this house, did you remember us then?" "Mama, when you sent lies and fake pictures, did you remember truth then?" Gloria covered her face. Every question landed where excuses could not hide. "I was foolish," she whispered. "Yes," the older woman replied. "Very foolish." Silence filled the room for a while, except for the child playing with a cup on the floor. Gloria gathered courage again. "Please, Mama, I need forgiveness. I need another chance. I know Richard is angry now, but if he hears me..." Richard's mother lifted her hand to stop the words. "Another chance?" she asked calmly. "Do you know what my son looked like when he came back from your house?" Gloria looked down. "No." "He looked like someone returning from war. His eyes had no life. He cried like a child in this room. He could hardly eat. That is what you gave him after 5 years of loyalty." Gloria shook with sobs. "I did not know it would become like this." "Sin always says that after it grows teeth," the old woman said. "You knew enough each time you lied." Gloria pressed her palms together. "Please, Mama, I am suffering now. Colin left me. We were thrown out. I have nowhere stable. I only need help to speak with Richard." The older woman's eyes narrowed with sadness more than anger. "So, the man you chose has gone?" Gloria nodded miserably. "He left when money finished." Richard's mother gave a slow, painful smile. "Then now you have learnt what kind of love that was." Gloria cried. I know now." "Knowing after destruction is easy," the older woman replied. "Knowing before it is wisdom." Gloria crawled a little closer. "Please tell Richard I am sorry. Please tell him I still care." The older woman's voice became firm. No. Listen to me carefully. Richard returned abroad. He deserves peace now. Gloria froze. He has gone? Yes. Without seeing me? He saw enough already. Gloria bent forward and wept loudly. Her child began crying too and climbed into her lap. She held him tightly while rocking with grief. Richard's mother watched with a mixture of pity and sternness. She was old enough to understand both compassion and boundaries. Mama, Gloria said between sobs, I know I used him. I know I failed him. But please, one call, just one call. The older woman shook her head. No, I will not open his wounds because your life is hard now. Gloria stared at her in despair. So, there is no hope? Richard's mother answered slowly. Hope exists for people who change and walk honestly, but some doors close when trust is buried too deep. Gloria lowered her eyes. Those words entered her like cold rain. The old woman continued, not cruelly, but truthfully. My son will one day find someone who truly loves him, someone who sees a man, not a wallet, someone who values peace, not easy money. He deserves that. Gloria cried weakly because she knew it was true. She had treated Richard as a provider first and a person second. Now another woman might receive the loyalty she wasted. That thought hurt more than hunger. Richard's mother stood and went into another room. She returned with a small amount of food wrapped in nylon and a little money. Gloria looked up in surprise. Take this for the child, the older woman said. It is not reward, it is mercy for hunger. Gloria burst into fresh tears. Thank you, Mama. Do not call me that carelessly, the woman replied, though her voice had softened. Motherhood is not by mouth alone. Gloria bowed her head again. She understood. After some time, she lifted her bags, tied the child on her back once more, and moved toward the door slowly. Before leaving, she turned. I am truly sorry, she said. Richard's mother nodded once. Then let your future prove it. Gloria stepped outside into the afternoon sun, carrying shame and a little food. The gate closed behind her with a sound that felt final. She stood on the road for a moment, unable to move. That house had once represented stability, love, and family. Now it was a place she could no longer belong to. She wiped her face and began walking toward the motor park. There was nowhere left in the city for her. She decided to return to the village where some distant relatives still lived and where survival, though hard, might at least be possible. The journey to the village was dusty and long. The child slept against her chest during part of it. Gloria stared through the bus window at passing trees and open land. Every mile felt like movement away from the woman she once pretended to be. In the village, life welcomed no one gently. Houses were older, roads rougher, and opportunities smaller. A cousin allowed her to share a small corner room in exchange for help and modest payment when possible. Gloria accepted without complaint. Pride had already been stripped from her. She began looking for any honest work available. At first, she washed clothes for families who had better means. She bent over buckets for hours, scrubbing shirts, trousers, wrappers, school uniforms, and bed sheets until her fingers wrinkled and her back burned. Soap entered small cuts on her hands and stunk sharply. She carried wet clothes to lines under the sun, then hurried home to feed her child. On other days, she carried loads from market for older women who paid small coins. She balanced baskets on her head and walked long roads in heat that made sweat run into her eyes. Sometimes she sold groundnuts, sachet water, or small fruits by roadside, calling to passers-by for tiny profits. The child stayed near her or with neighbors when possible. Every hard day reminded her of the stable life she had destroyed with her own hands. When she bent over washing, she remembered Richard standing in factories abroad. When she counted small coins, she remembered the large transfers she had wasted. When men flirted lazily near market corners, she saw Colin's face in all of them. At night, after feeding her son simple meals, She would lie beside him in the tiny room and stare into darkness. The village sounds of insects and distant voices filled the air. She often cried silently so as not to wake the child. If only, she would whisper to herself. But if only never changed morning. Sometimes she heard news that Richard was doing well abroad. Sometimes she heard nothing. Either way, she no longer expected rescue. She had learned that regret cannot become transport back to old choices. It can only walk beside a person as they live with what remains. And so, regret became her daily companion. Richard remained cautious for a long time after returning abroad. He continued living in the same foreign country where he had once worked with dreams of another future. The city had not changed much, but he had changed deeply. He still woke early. He still went to work before sunrise some mornings. He still took extra shifts when available. But now he worked with a different reason. Before, he had worked to build love. Now he worked to rebuild himself. He kept his life simple and quiet. He moved to a better room after some time, one with more light and enough space to breathe. He bought decent furniture for himself at last. He ate better food. He rested more when he could. Yet inside, trust remained injured. If people asked personal questions, he answered carefully. If women showed interest, he stepped back politely. He had learned how smiles can hide selfishness, and that lesson stayed with him like a scar. Some evenings, after long shifts, he sat by the window of his apartment and thought about how easily a person's heart can be changed by pain. He was not bitter every day, but he was guarded every day. His mother often called from Nigeria and encouraged him. "My son," she would say, "do not let one bad chapter become the whole book." Richard would smile softly at her wisdom. "I am trying, Mama." She asked if he was eating well, resting enough, and speaking to good people. She prayed for him often. Those calls became medicine. Years passed quietly. Richard gained promotions at work because of his discipline and honesty. He learned new skills, handled bigger responsibilities, and earned more money. Co-workers respected him greatly. He helped younger workers who arrived confused and homesick, remembering his own early years. He sent money home to care for his mother and improve the family house. He invested carefully. Outwardly, life was moving upward. Inwardly, one room remained locked. Then, life brought change in an ordinary way, as it often does. One winter morning, Richard slipped on icy pavement outside a supermarket and twisted his ankle badly. The pain was sharp enough that he could not stand well. A passerby called for help and he was taken to a nearby clinic. Richard hated hospitals and wanted to leave quickly, but the swelling forced him to stay. He sat in the waiting area irritated and embarrassed, his trouser leg raised slightly, ankle wrapped with temporary ice. After some time, a woman in a white coat called his name. "Mr. Richard?" He looked up. She was tall, graceful-faced with warm, intelligent eyes. Her voice carried kindness without weakness. Richard stood carefully and followed her into an examination room. She introduced herself. "I am Dr. Elizabeth, South Africa." Her accent was gentle and clear. Richard nodded politely. "Nice to meet you, doctor. I hope this is not serious." She smiled lightly. "We will see. Please sit." She examined the ankle carefully, asking questions as she worked. "Where exactly did you sleep?" "Outside the supermarket." "Did you hear a snap?" "No." "Can you move your toes?" "Yes." Her hands were professional and steady. Richard noticed she explained each step before touching him, something he appreciated. Many people rush kindness. She did not. After checking and sending him for a quick scan, she returned with good news. "It is a sprain, not a fracture. Painful, but it will heal." Richard let out a breath. Thank God. She wrapped the ankle properly and gave clear instructions. Rest it, elevate it, use these medications, and no pretending to be stronger than you are. Richard laughed unexpectedly. "You know men well." "I know stubborn patients well," she replied. That simple exchange stayed in his mind longer than expected. Before he left, she asked, "Do you have anyone at home to help you for a few days?" Richard hesitated. No, I manage alone. Her expression softened just a little. Then, actually follow instructions. Pride does not reduce swelling. Richard thanked her and left. For the next few days, he found himself thinking of the doctor more than of the ankle. Not because of beauty alone, though she was beautiful in a calm, natural way. It was something deeper. She carried peace. She looked like someone whose goodness had roots. A week later, he returned for review. Elizabeth greeted him with warm professionalism. "You look less angry today," she said while checking the ankle. Richard smiled. "Maybe because I can walk." "Good. Healing helps mood." Their conversation stretched longer this time. She asked where he was from. He told her he was Nigerian. She said she was from South Africa and had moved for specialist training years earlier. They spoke about weather, food, migration, family, and how people far from home create new homes in pieces. There was ease between them, but no pressure. Richard noticed he did not feel the need to defend himself around her. That was new. After the appointment, she said casually, "There's a community cultural event this weekend. Many Africans attend. If your uncle behaves, you should go." Richard almost dismissed the idea, but later he went. The hall was full of music, laughter, different accents, bright clothes, and food from across the continent. Richard stood awkwardly with a plate until he heard a familiar voice. "You came." Elizabeth approached, wearing elegant, simple clothes, her hair neatly styled, smiling with genuine pleasure. "You invited me," Richard replied. "True," she said. "Then come and sit before you escape." They spent hours talking, not performing, not impressing, talking. She spoke about medicine, losing patients sometimes, and how compassion can be painful work. He spoke carefully about years of labor, homesickness, and learning resilience. She listened deeply, not just politely. When he mentioned trust being difficult, she did not pry. She only said, "Some wounds need air and time." Richard felt strangely understood. Friendship began there. It grew slowly and honestly over many months. They met for coffee, community events, walks in parks, and simple meals. Sometimes she worked long hospital shifts and apologized for being tired. Richard respected her discipline. Sometimes he had overtime and arrived late. She respected his effort. They did not rush labels or promises. They learned each other first. Richard noticed many things. Elizabeth was kind to cleaners, drivers, children, and elderly people. She never changed character depending on who was useful. She kept her word. If she said she would call, she called. If she could not make a meeting, she informed him early. She had her own money and never looked at his wallet with hungry eyes. She asked about his mother often and sent greetings. She laughed easily, but never cruelly. She prayed for meals quietly. She corrected people without humiliating them. These ordinary virtues moved Richard more than dramatic gestures ever could. Yet, love did not come easily to him. One evening, after nearly a year of friendship, they sat on a bench near a river after dinner. Light reflected on dark water. Cold air moved gently around them. Elizabeth noticed he was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Richard took time before answering. "That you are kind to me, and that kindness scares me." She turned fully toward him. "Why?" He looked ahead. "Because when someone has been deceived badly, part of them believes safety is temporary." Elizabeth did not rush to comfort him with empty words. She asked softly, "Do you want to tell me?" So Richard told her about Gloria. Not every painful detail, but enough. The years abroad, the money sent, the lies, the child, the humiliation. He spoke with embarrassment at first, but Elizabeth listened without judgment. When he finished, she said nothing for a moment. Then she placed her gloved hand gently over his. "You were betrayed," she said, "but you were not foolish for loving sincerely." Richard felt his throat tighten. Those words echoed what his mother had once said. Elizabeth continued, "Please do not punish yourself forever for another person's choices." Tears rose in Richard's eyes unexpectedly. He had not cried in front of anyone outside family since that season of pain. "I don't know how to trust again," he admitted. Elizabeth squeezed his hand lightly. "Then do not trust quickly. Trust slowly, brick by brick, truth by truth." That night, something opened inside him. Not fully, but enough for light to enter. From then on, their friendship deepened into love. It was not loud love, it was steady love. Richard found himself smiling more. He looked forward to messages again. He cooked for her sometimes. She teased his seasoning amount and improved them. He waited outside the hospital after difficult shifts just to take her home safely. She visited his apartment and helped make it warmer and more human. He introduced her to his mother on video call. His mother beamed with joy. "My daughter," she said immediately, making Elizabeth laugh. "Mama, we just met," Richard protested. "I know what I see," his mother replied. 2 years later, Richard proposed in a quiet botanical garden where flowers were blooming despite cold weather. He was nervous like a younger man. "Elizabeth," he said, holding a ring with shaking fingers, "you helped me believe goodness still exists. Will you marry me?" Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Richard." They married in a beautiful ceremony attended by friends from many countries, co-workers, church members, and family who joined physically or through screens. Music from Nigeria mixed with music from South Africa. Joy crossed borders that pain once built. Richard's mother cried through most of the celebration and thanked God repeatedly. Their marriage was built on truth, respect, and partnership. They discussed money openly. They shared burdens. They apologized when wrong. They protected each other's dignity in public and private. They laughed often. When conflict came, they solved it instead of hiding it. Home became a place of rest, not suspicion. Soon, they were blessed with children. First came a boy with Richard's eyes and Elizabeth's calm expression. Richard held the baby and wept openly. "I thought this part of life passed me," he said. Elizabeth kissed his cheek. Later came a second boy full of energy and noise. Then years after, a girl with bright laughter who wrapped the whole house around her finger. Their home filled with toys, school bags, bedtime stories, spilled cereal, little shoes near doors, and family photos taken in honest joy. Richard would sometimes return from work to hear children shouting, "Daddy!" and running toward him. Each time it healed something old inside him. Laughter returned to his life not as performance, but as daily sound. Peace replaced sorrow little by little until sorrow became memory instead of residence. Sometimes on quiet nights after the children slept, Richard sat with Elizabeth and thought about the road behind him. He did not thank betrayal, but he recognized survival. He had been wounded deeply, yet not destroyed. He had been deceived, yet not made bitter forever. He had lost years, yet still found a brighter chapter. One evening, his eldest son asked, "Daddy, were you always happy?" Richard smiled thoughtfully and answered, "No, but happiness can come after hard times if you keep walking." Elizabeth looked at him with knowing eyes and reached for his hand. His story became proof that heartbreak can scar a person, but it does not have to define the future. Sometimes, after the darkest pain, life still keeps mercy waiting around another corner. The moral lesson of this story is that love without honesty will always end in pain, and money cannot build a true home when trust is missing. Betrayal may bring temporary comfort, but lies always collapse with time. A faithful person should never be ashamed because they were used, since the shame belongs to the deceiver. Hard times can wound the heart, but they do not have to destroy the future. When one door closes through pain, life can still open a better one through patience, wisdom, and true love. Thanks for watching this amazing story on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.